My name is John Kisler, and I'm going to take you through a few things with regard to your running shoes, how to lace them really and how to tie them. So this is how your shoes arrive, as you can see, usually ready laced for you. Now ordinarily we do a simple hand over knot and then we put a bow in it and tighten up your shoe. Now in the normal run of play that's fine, you produce a granny knot, what we call in the UK a granny knot. Not a particularly good self-tightening knot, it will come loose, so we have to deal with that. Now the simplest and perhaps the most effective is just to put a double knot in. Quite a few people do that, it's sufficiently strong, it doesn't tend to come undone, but the difficulty with it is it's a bit unwieldy and it's also a bit difficult to undo once you've got cold and wet hands. So another way of dealing with that is really to put a reef knot in. Okay. I don't really know many people that do that, but this is by way of demonstration. A reef knot is a self-tightening knot, very secure, but it is a little bit awkward to undo, similar to a double knot. But it's quite effective. You do end up with a lot of lace at the end that you need to deal with. So a simple way of dealing with that is to actually do your normal bow. Now a normal hand over knot for a right-handed person would be left over right. But if you change that to right over left, okay, and then put your normal bow in, you'll find that the underlying knot is actually a reef knot. So now these knots will come undone. All you need to do is tug at the loose end and it will come undone. So that's the simplest strategy for producing a self-tightening knot. There's some more elegant solutions, a little bit more awkward to tie. Again, you start with a simple hand over knot. Okay, but this time you're going to put two single bows in. So you put a bow in one side, wrap your string around and pull it all the way through. Okay, so you've got a bow on one side and a long loose tie on the other. If you then wrap that loose end around your first bow and pull that through, you do end up with two single bows. Now that again is a self-tightening knot, equally as strong as a reef knot, slightly more awkward to do up, as I've said, but it does come undone nicely, so you don't have the same problems you do with a double bow or a simple reef knot. So that's just a few simple ways of making sure your shoes don't come undone easily. Obviously you can use self-tiers or you can use lace locks. Now we're going to move on to the lacing system itself. We're going to look at the runner's knot or the runner's tie. Now shoes are usually very tight around the forefoot, but they tend to be a bit loose around the ankle. So what we've done in running circles really is put in the runner's knot, where you take back a lace, leave an eyelet free, and then the same lace on one side, you loop back on yourself, back into the eyelet on the same side. Now this produces a little loop, or some people call it a stirrup. Now if you do that on both sides, you end up with a little lace on the inside which you can thread through the opposite stirrup. Now do that on both sides, pull them tight, and you end up seeing that the shoe can be pulled really tight around the ankle, but it leaves the forefoot relatively clear. Okay, it's not very tight over the forefoot. When you pull this knot tight, it will pull the back in. All right. Now that can produce really quite a tight ankle, but sometimes it's not tight enough. So all running shoes come with an extra eyelet, a little set a bit further back on the ankle itself, and you can use those too. Now that produces an even tighter fit around the ankle, whilst again still sparing the forefoot. So there you go, a nice little tight fit. You can even see when you do the shoe up when there's no foot in it, that it actually pulls at the top end rather than down through the lace. So now I think we need to start looking at some more specific patterns for those that do have more particular problems. So you can see it's a crossover lacing system down here, across the top of the foot, across the cuneiform bones, across the ligaments at the top there, which can make things a bit uncomfortable, a bit tight. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take the lacing system back down and try and produce a bit more of a looser fit in that forefoot area. So if we take the laces down, you'll see that we can actually produce quite a bit of space whilst preserving the fit around the ankle. Always a bit awkward taking laces out. I suppose once you've got them set in, you don't really want to take them out. So anyway, here we are down at the normal starting position through the bottom eyelets of your shoe. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to do a parallel lacing system to try and create some space. We don't want that crossover of the original lacing system. So if we take the first lace of the left hand side and take it through the second eyelet on the same side, we produce a parallel piece of lace up one side, and we go perpendicular across the foot with the lace. So you can see automatically we've got a couple of parallel lines across the forefoot there. The lace on the original side, on the left hand side, if we lace that up through and then across, you can see you've got a parallel and then a perpendicular lacing system. Now we can take that right the way up to the top, and you can see that already there's much less lace across the front of the foot there. It produces a much looser fit, and it's much harder to pull that tight. So once you've got that in, you need to adjust it to your foot size and make sure that it's comfortable. But you'll find you won't get quite as tight a pull on it as you would with the original crossover lacing system. So we take that right to the top there, and you should be able to see that even with this lacing system, you can combine the parallel lacing system with a runner's knot. You can double your back on yourself, producing a stirrup. You'll see me pointing out the tongue there. It's important to keep the tongue in, because you don't want to lose the tongue down the bottom end or to the left and right. So even with this parallel system, make sure you tuck in your lace through its little loop. And there I am putting in a runner's loop, even with the parallel system. That produces a tight fit around the ankle whilst maintaining some slackness over the top of the foot. Now it's obviously not the only way you can tie these laces in the parallel system. Here we did a perpendicular parallel type of approach, but you can even cross over those two. So there I was demonstrating how loose that fit was. You can see that it's just one lace across each of the forefoot, so you've actually got, on my particular shoes there, 5 laces across the top and a couple of parallel lines down each side of the eyelets. But that's actually quite a loose fit. So we'll take it back down again, and we'll demonstrate to you briefly the crossing over variation of that particular lacing pattern. So on this occasion I'm crossing over the lace there. We're trying to produce a similar effect, parallel lacing, but we're trying to take out that cross down the centre of the shoe. You'll see with this system, because it is a crossover system, you do get some little crossing over, but you'll find it's to the left and to the right of the centre of the foot. So it produces a slightly tighter fit, whilst at the same time avoiding anything down the middle. Okay, so you can see there's a cross there. It's actually, when you fully lace your shoe up, you'll find it's either to the left or to the right, and you'll find that all the way up the shoe. So here at the top of the foot, again you can see how there is some crossing points, but they're no longer central. Now our friends over in America will use a very similar lacing pattern, but they'll start that in a very different way, and we'll go on to demonstrate exactly how they do that now. So here we are at the bottom of the shoe. This is how I would normally start lacing my shoes, but for the sake of our American friends, they would normally start this particular pattern on the inside of the shoe, on the big foot side, the big toe side. You start with 2 laces and you bring them both straight across. Okay, and that first one that went through the first eyelet there, I've taken in the first eyelet but back out the second. Out the third. And then we've done the same with the lace that's above that. So now we'll just move the whole system up by 1, and we go across and do the same on the other side. It looks like a much more elegant system when you see it on video, and I think it probably is. It probably is wise to to learn that technique if you're going to use a parallel lacing system. So I think now we're going to look at some very specific patterns for individual problems. Now I am making a bit of a mistake by having that bottom eyelet already through. But now we're going to look at particularly the big toe. Some people have a lot of pressure on the big toe, and we want to try and relieve some of that pressure. Easiest way is to have a lacing system that pulls up on that big toe side of the shoe. So we're going to use an asymmetric lacing pattern. Now first off, we have to make the big toe side lace as it goes through. We have to make that much shorter than we have done previously. And we take it right up to the top on the opposite side and lace it through the very top eyelet. And from then it becomes fairly clear what we have to do, because the remaining lace then has to thread through the remaining eyelets. Clearly there are two ways of doing this. One is to cross over the foot all the way up, so backwards and forwards. Now that creates several crossings of the foot and therefore can cause some problems with some pressure over the top of the foot. But it is quite an effective and quite a tight system. Now when you pull that tight, you can see that the asymmetric lace immediately pulls up on the big toe side and does create quite a bit of space for your big toe there. Alternatively, we could have laced that up so that it was parallel. So instead of crossing over those laces each time, we could bring it up parallel on each individual side. So across, up, across, up. That's a much looser system, but it still has that advantage that it can create some space for your big toe, because that's the key part of that particular lacing system. You're trying to create space for your big toe. So there we go. That's us lacing the system in a parallel and perpendicular manner. And again, that creates far fewer crossings of the forefoot. It makes it just slightly easier for you. All of these lacing patterns can be combined with the runner's knot at the top. So if you like that tightness around the ankle, that's fine. You can use those. What we're just trying to do is give you some ideas of how you can loosen things up a little bit. Now you see on these shoes here, the eyelets go down to below the widest part of the foot. So what we're going to look at here is creating some space for the widest part of your foot. But particularly we're thinking about bunions here. Now bunions occur on the opposite side to your big toe on the hole. They can occur on the big toe side, but usually it's on the opposite side. And we do want to create as much space as we can for those that have bunions as a particular problem. So on this occasion, because our shoes can be laced right down beyond the widest part, we actually just bring the lacing system one up from the bottom. It's a very simple and elegant solution to that kind of problem, but it does solve a lot of issues for a few people. Now again, once you've got past that, you can use either a parallel system or a crossing over system, and you can combine that too with the runner's knot at the top. You can also combine it with reducing some pressure on the big toe there. So that's quite a useful way of creating lots of space in lots of parts of the foot, particularly if you've got very splayed or very large feet, or even feet that are troubled with either gout or a bunions. So now what we're going to do here is look at lacing patterns for particular areas of particular hotspots over the top of the foot, over the cuneiform area, over the ligaments of the top of the foot. Now some runners complain that this kind of tightness causes them to have some numbness of the big toe, or even just general numbness and pain in the foot. So if we can create some space in that forefoot area where you get those hot spots, then that'll be beneficial. So what we do here is we can actually use a lacing system that can combine a crossover and a parallel system to create a little bit of space at various points. So we start off at normal. I've used the crossing over pattern at the bottom there, and immediately I'm going to miss an eyelet or two, again in a in a parallel pattern this time, okay, to create that space. And I think it should become immediately apparent that I've managed to create some space in the forefoot there. So as you see, when I lace the rest of the shoe up, I'm using a crossover pattern, you can see. But when we have that tied up, there's a space, there's a hole in the middle there. And that's great for people with particular high arches who complain of particular pains in that area. Now we didn't stop there. We can do the similar sort of thing, either an eyelet down or an eyelet up, or even in two eyelets. We could actually have space at the bottom there and at the top if you had particular problems with that. And again, you can combine this with the runner's knot at the top. So we'll just take that back down again, because I'm going to want to wear these shoes later for running.